Tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal, it's hit him on the pad, he's out! Lions gone, New South Wales are 9 down, onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car! Oh, I think it's hit a car! What a way to bring up your 50!
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menace, and I'm in a good mood because my co-host is back. Damien Watson is back after a couple of weeks off. Damien, how are you?
Good to be with you, Menace. Slightly under the weather with the Melbourne winter really starting to kick in now. This is where I envy people like you who are a bit further north than I am in Australia, but happy to talk cricket. There's plenty going on for this time of year, I've got to say. We've had the wrapping up of the IPL, one of the more controversial, I suppose, when you consider all the external factors. And, of course, we've got the World Test Championship and further selection news for the Caribbean Tour as well. So there's a lot happening. Yeah,
lots to talk about on this show. And actually, speaking of Melbourne, I've booked to come down to Melbourne in a few weeks.
Oh, yes.
And listeners might not be aware of this, but Damien and I have never met in person. So if come July, Damien's off the podcast, you can tell it didn't go well.
We got to meet up. You should, I don't know if any establishment, whether it's a cafe, matters, given you have a hospitality background, we should do a bit of a live show or something. That'd be something.
Wow. Yeah, midwinter cricket show. Why not? We could just start talking cricket and, I'm sure we'll draw a crowd. Anyway, let's get into the cricket news because you're right. Lots to talk about. There's been a massive retirement. There's selection news. And let's start with that selection news because just before we recorded this, Australia announced their T20 squad for the West Indies that'll follow the Test series. So firstly, Cummins, Stark and Head are coming home. So three of the big names are missing from this T20 squad. But I think the two big headlines are Mitch Owen is in. The Big Bash hero has made his way into the Australian squad. And Damien, this was only a matter of time. You cannot ignore that sort of electric batting in the T20 format.
And he stood up under pressure as well, but as we've seen that over the journey as well in big games. So I think it's a great thing in the sense that it gives a bit of incentive to some of those players at Big Bash level to perform because you never know what can await you in terms of selection. So I think it's certainly a good news story and hopefully he can take advantage of the opportunity as well. But, yeah, his first taste of international cricket, a great moment for him. Of course, we remember his match-winning ton in the BBL final, and he's a pretty consistent player as well. I think he's improved over time, so hopefully he can take the opportunity with both hands. The thing that stood out to me, Metters, was the fact that we have Sean Abbott, Ben Dwarshuis, Spencer Johnson. They all missed out on a Cricket Australia contract, yet they're all picked for the West Indies tour, and yet Xavier Bartlett, who is contracted, misses out. So I don't know what the issue is there, whether there's some sort of injury case. I don't know.
Yeah, I know Bartlett was over at the IPL and didn't play much, so he hasn't had a lot of cricket. Look, I know that they still value Abbott and Johnson's contributions in white ball cricket, so they've got the nod ahead of Bartlett. Maybe they didn't want to throw him over there without many matches in the IPL under his belt. And Bartlett they see definitely as a bowler for the future. So I think we'll see him play in the white ball teams in years to come for sure. But strange, though, that I guess Abbott and Johnson weren't given contracts, but then Bartlett was. But I guess this is good for Abbott and Johnson because they can earn contracts. If the more cricket they play for Australia, they could maybe earn a contract through playing in these games. The other big inclusion was Matt Kuhneman. We haven't seen him in a lot of Australia's one-day squads and T20 squads. He played in Sri Lanka a few years ago for Australian white ball cricket, but he's come into this team and I think that's a really good inclusion. He's been bowling so well in first-class cricket, but he's also a very good T20 bowler. Seen him at the SCG, bowled some very good spells on that wicket. And the wickets in the West Indies are similar to that, a little slower. So good to see him get a call up into the T20 squad. I guess it really, the decline of Ashton Agar has opened the door for a left-arm finger spinner in Matt Kuhneman.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he goes at white ball level, because I know he's been around the traps for a while, but it's still a little bit different. The tactics are a little bit different. The game situation's a little bit different. I still think it'll be a bit for him to adapt to.
Yeah, but he's done well for the Heat, so I think he's got the tools in the kit box. The other thing is there's been two major exclusions. Jake Fraser-McGurk has been left out of the squad. He's been given a lot of opportunities in white ball cricket for Australia, but he just hasn't made them count. He also had a very poor IPL. I mean, he's had a very poor year in all forms of cricket. So this is really unfortunate, but he's missing this squad. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't think you can justify picking him any longer, and he'll miss out. And also Marcus Stoinis misses out. And this probably signals the end of his international career. He's retired from one-day cricket, probably. He might have been looking at getting to the next T20 World Cup, which is early next year, but I think the selectors have decided to move on from him, and this is a signal that, you know, he's not in their plans for the next T20 World Cup. So, you know, the end of the Stoinis era.
Not entirely surprised by either. I think with Fraser-McGurk, as you said, he's been given ample opportunities, so I agree. It's not entirely surprising either. We often do see this with young players that come onto the scene. They create a bit of an impression early on. It's a bit like the old second-year blues betters. I know it's not necessarily your second year, but sometimes you make an impact in 1 year and then you fall off a cliff a little bit in the second year. That's quite common for a player who's quite young. So I'd still back him if he's got the temerity to obviously fight through this and ensure that he doesn't get put down by this situation. I'd still back him, Fraser-McGurk, if he's got enough character to come back into the side if he regains a bit of form. It might allow him to gain a bit of perspective as well and to focus on the basics too, because I think it's natural for a younger player when they're swept up in their own hype. I'm not suggesting he was arrogant in any way, shape or form, but sometimes when you have a bit of hype surrounding you, it does create a little bit of a situation where you do lose a bit of perspective. It's natural.
Well, also he got into this mold of just trying to hit every ball for six, basically.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You can't really do that. Once you get to the top level, you're going to get found out. He needs to work on some just slight variations in his gears. You know, you've got to come up and down the gears depending on how good the bowling is. And he does look like a bit of a one-trick pony at the moment. He's got that sort of beautiful swing over the leg side. And when it's working, he's a sweet timer of the ball, but yeah, probably just hasn't flourished the way he would have liked. I still think he's got a lot of talent. You can't do what he did in the IPL last year and not be a good player, but he's just got to mature. There's plenty of time left for him. I've had a chat with him a few times, and you know, he's a very nice kid who's a good listener. So I think it'll happen for him, but I think this is the right thing from Cricket Australia. They need to just let him play domestic cricket, and even if it's a couple of years where it's a hard slog for him, he just needs to work it out.
It'll enable him to appreciate it when he does get back to the top betters, and sometimes you need that in your career. Sometimes it's beneficial in the long run. So, and I back him as well to regain a bit of form if he has to spend a bit of time at domestic level again.
Yeah, and I think the right thing with Stoinis as well. I think I agree with you. His time has passed. He's been a good servant of Australian white ball cricket. Probably never quite nailed it for me at international level. And when you look at Australia's performances in T20 World Cups, they've never had a consistent run. Now, he had a great last T20 World Cup. He was very consistent. But apart from that, he's sort of been in and out of white ball teams. And I just think, you know, in his mid-30s now, it's time to look to the next generation. We need to be building a younger team for the next T20 World Cup and the one after that.
Well, he made that 150 for the Melbourne Stars, and that really put his name up in lights. Remember that innings at the MCG? And I think opportunities flowed from that. He probably just hasn't been able to string together that consistency that you speak of, Metters, over a long period of time, which can be hard in the shorter formats of the game, but that's what separates those who play for a long period of time at that level.
Yeah. No, still a very good T20 cricketer. All right, so next headline. So that is the T20 squad for the West Indies, and we will have the 3 tests before that. Some huge birthdays this week in Australian cricket. And firstly, we had the War brothers turning 60, and they have the same birthday as Steve Smith, who turned 36. So all 3 birthdays on June 2nd. That's 3 great cricketers sharing a birthday. And there was a lot of tributes to the War brothers on their 60th birthday, Damien. A lot of people thinking about their memories and saying, God, how old am I if the War brothers are 60? I didn't really have that moment of reflection because I'm fully accepted that I'm an old man. So I accepted the War brothers must be 60 then. But it did bring back a lot of great memories. 2 of the best cricketers I've ever seen. They lit up my childhood in every form of cricket. Both of them were just amazing to watch. And the question was posed during the week, Damien, that they must be the greatest ever sporting twins.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm trying to think of other sporting twins. Maybe the Bryant brothers in tennis. Absolutely dominated men's doubles tennis for a long period of time. But yeah, they'd have to be up there. And very, very different, stark contrast in terms of styles and stark contrast in terms of personality. But as I think the 2 of them would admit, particularly after being together in a team for a long period of time, I don't think they spend a lot of time with each other anymore. It's not saying they hate each other, but they're very different in terms of personality. And that's what makes the story, I think, even more intriguing, isn't it, in regards to their success. But with Mark Waugh, we know about how casual and laconic he made the cricketing sphere seem with his fielding and with his batting as well. And Steve Waugh, I mean, when the chips were down, I know a lot of people were critical of Steve Waugh with his captaincy style and things like that. But when the chips were down, I don't know if you want anyone else in your corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of my most treasured memories revolve around the War brothers. Steve Waugh's last ball century at the SCG that I was lucky enough to be at. His 120 not out versus South Africa at Headingley in the 1990 World Cup that led Australia into the semi-finals. Mark Waugh, his century on debut at the Adelaide Oval when he was picked for his brother and he just stroked 100 against the Poms with Mo Matthews at the other end. I mean, just so many brilliant memories of both of them. I remember the first time I saw them play together at the SCG in a one-day game. Was it Steve run out Mark? I think Steve ran out Mark looking for a quick single, and they didn't always run too well together, which is ironic considering they're twin brothers. Maybe they didn't have that sort of connection that some twins have. But yeah, great memories of them. Happy birthday to both of them. I do see Mark Waugh around the commentary box a bit, and he's very lovely. He's laid back. He's got his glasses on and he's reading the form guide. I guess it's maybe why I accepted he was 60, because I've seen him looking around that age in the commentary box. And had Steve Waugh on the podcast a few years ago. And Damien, for a long time, he was my white whale. He was, I was, such a Steve Waugh devotee growing up. He was my favorite Australian player, favorite Australian captain, favorite Australian batter. Not only did I love his captaincy, but I just loved the way he batted, high front elbow and his beautiful play off the back foot and off his legs. But finally got him on the podcast a few years ago, and it wasn't disappointing. He was just as lovely in person. It was great to talk to him about his career. So yeah, the Waugh brothers are 60 and Steve Smith is 36. And I was listening to the Grandstand Cricket podcast with my good friends Eddie Cowan and Corbin Middlemas, and Eddie Cowan floated a rumor that Steve Smith might retire at the end of this World Test Championship final. Now this seems outrageous, but then I started to think about why he would retire. So there was a story that he's going to the America in between the World Test Championship final and the West Indies Test to play 2 games in Major League Cricket. That could be a smokescreen. He might actually be going to Major League Cricket and not going to the West Indies at all and not playing any more Test cricket for Australia. And people will say, well, doesn't he want to hang on for the Ashes? The last 3 Ashes tours here by England, Australia have won 4-0, 4-0 and 5-0. Steve Smith versus England at home in the last 3 tours is up 13-0. He's got nothing left to prove. He could quite easily retire now, the end of this World Test Championship, especially if they win it. He goes out as World Test champions. He's retired from one-day cricket. I don't think this is as absurd as some people might think of it. He's 36. He's not going to play forever. And that would be huge if he does pull up stumps at the end of this match.
Yeah, there's potential for it to happen. I just wonder, though, would you like, I don't know if he's this type of person, you know him better than I do, Menners, but do you think he'd be the type that would like the adulation and the proper farewell tour, shall we say, like we've seen with some cricketers in the past, at home, in front of the home crowd, or not?
I don't think so. And you can only judge from what happened with his one-day career. He could have easily said during the Champions Trophy, this will be my last tournament for Australia, and then I'm hanging up the boots. He didn't do that. He waited till the semi-final. They lost the semi-final. And then he told the boys in the dressing room, that's me done. And maybe it's the same situation here. He's actually someone that sort of shuns the spotlight in a little bit of a sense.
Yeah, he's not someone who necessarily reads off the crowd necessarily. He's sort of in the zone. He's always in the zone, and that's fair enough too. So I don't think it's absurd either. It'll be interesting though. Maybe would it depend on the result, Menners?
That's true. Maybe if they lose, he thinks, well, I want to stay on and win the Ashes, but that's not a good idea. Anyway, that's just a little rumor Eddie Cowan started. I don't know if it's true or not, but it certainly certainly caught my attention. My ears pricked up, caught my attention. Did I just say prick then and then not say anything after?
No. You didn't call anyone a prick. It's all right. I know you're used to inadvertently calling people names, Menners, but I think you're safe this time.
Good. It also did make me excited for Major League Cricket, which will come after the World Test Championship, because I love that T20 tournament. I loved it last year. It's on a really good time for Australians. There's a lot of Australians playing because of our affiliation with a few clubs. So, a lot of the games start when Australians are getting up and having breakfast and etc. So I cannot wait for Major League Cricket. And Glenn Maxwell will be playing for the San Francisco Unicorns, not uniforms, in Major League Cricket. And with that, the big news this week is Glenn Maxwell has retired from one-day international cricket. He goes out a dual World Cup winner, having won in 2015 and 2023. And I think that really is what his legacy is all about. The fact that he played a vital role in 2 World Cup wins with both bat and ball. I don't want to understate the importance of his bowling in both those World Cup wins, because he enabled Australia to play their quick bowlers, and they didn't have to pick a spinner or another spinning all-rounder, because he was so good at keeping the runs down with the ball. So I think that's the measure of success, winning 2 World Cups. We'll go into his record. I was watching the back page on Fox Sports last night, and they had rugby league journalist James Hooper on, and he was saying that Glenn Maxwell is our best ever ODI player. And all I'm going to say is, Hoops, is stick to NRL. I'll stick to cricket. We'll do a deal. You stick to NRL, because you clearly know a lot about that, but not a lot about cricket. And I know a lot about cricket, and I can tell you Glenn Maxwell is not nearly our best ever one-day player. He's a very good. He might make the top 10 Australian one-day players, but just. But yeah, what are your memories of Maxwell? What sort of legacy do you think he leaves with?
Yeah, great player. When the chips were down, he did lift his side, particularly that middle order. I think the zenith of his career across all formats will probably go down as that innings against Afghanistan, believe it or not. I know that's hard to predict. 10 years earlier, he wouldn't have predicted that. But in that 2023 World Cup, when he really stood up, when it looked like the Australians were going nowhere against the Afghanistanis, I think that will probably prove to be the zenith of his career. Maybe something will happen in another format, I'm not sure. But yeah, fantastic player. It's always one of those things, I think, with Glenn Maxwell, and I know it more so applies to other formats of the game, did we ever see the best of him? Was he ever given the chance to show his best? That will probably always be a question with him, but you can't fault what he did at one-day level for Australia. He was absolutely fantastic, and importantly, when the pressure was on.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think we saw the best of him in one-day cricket because of those 2 World Cup wins. Never saw it in Test cricket. Now, his one-day international sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, but is he a victim in the sense that one-day cricket over the last 10 years, we don't see as much of it and we don't place enough importance on it? So, therefore, it doesn't go to the forefront as much?
I think the World Cups do. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I
of
think
course.
that 2023 World Cup, such a huge win for Australia. He was a key part of it. Same with 2015. All the other one-day matches in between means fuck all, except the 2019 World Cup where we made the semi-finals. But the fact is he stood up in those two big tournaments. His one-day international record, 149 games. So there's a big difference. Say the War Brothers, they probably played 300 one-day games
Yep.
for Australia each. He's played half as many, 3,990 runs. He was asked on the radio, did he want to get to 4,000? And he said, well, look, he had enough opportunities to, and he just wasn't good enough. So it wasn't going to happen. Highest score of 201 not out, that famous innings against versus Afghanistan of 128 balls with 21 fours and 10 sixes. An innings I will never forget. One of the most exhilarating things to watch ever in the history of cricket. It was so good as an Australian fan, so good as a cricket fan. I watched with my jaw just on the floor the whole time because I couldn't believe what was going on. So, that was just incredible. His strike rate at one-day international level was 126.7, which is the second highest in the history of one-day cricket for players over 1,000 runs, behind Andre Russell. And he did excel in that finishing role where he would come in late and increase the run rate for Australia. He never quite flourished at the top of the order, but I just don't want to just shy away from how good of a bowler he was. 77 wickets in 149 games, an economy rate, and this is the big thing, he went for 5.46 under a run a ball in those middle overs. And that's so important if you're a captain, and that's so important for the balance of a side. If you've got an all-rounder who can bowl 10 overs and keep the runs down, especially under a run a ball. And back in the 2015 World Cup, it enabled Australia not to play a specialist spinner and to play fast bowlers and a couple of all-rounders. And then in the 2023 World Cup, it enabled Australia just to play Zampa and use Maxi as the second spinner. So his all-round contribution is sometimes, I think, a little missed.
I agree with you. I think his bowling is definitely overlooked. And he's a bloke who came from South Belgrave, Menace, which is not far from where I'm originally from as well, up in the Dandenong Ranges, across the road from where Peter Moody used to train black caviar. So it's interesting. They're drinking some nice water out that way. But, yeah, I think you're right. His bowling is understated. And as you said, I think for team balance, more than anything else, it created so many other opportunities. And you don't often have that flexibility.
I think it's the right time as well for him to retire, because he wouldn't have made the next 50 over World Cup. He said his body's not up to it. His broken leg, well, the leg he broke still bothers him. Playing 100 overs of cricket's a lot in a day. It is a lot. It is a big day for a cricketer playing a 50 over game. And so I think it's the perfect time. It gives Australia a couple of years to build up to the next 50 over World Cup. So good timing from Glenn Maxwell. He goes out on top, I think, with that World Cup win in 2023. And now the big show, he's in that T20 squad for the West Indies. So we'll still see him playing T20 cricket for Australia. But that's it for Glenn Maxwell at 50 over cricket. All right, for those listening on the podcast, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back with more. You're listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menas. I'm with Damien Watson, and we're going through all the cricket headlines. And Damien, well, it has been a drought-breaking year for sports fans. Big Ange delivered a title for Spurs, and now Virat Kohli has delivered an IPL title to RCB. After 18 years of heartache, RCB finally lift the IPL. They beat the Punjab Kings in the final overnight. Josh Hazlewood was part of the IPL winning side. Tim David made a great contribution to the RCB's title run before getting injured. But, a stunning victory for RCB. They batted first, made 9 for 190. Punjab Kings finished 7 for 184. That score is a little deceptive because of the last 4 balls of Punjab Kings innings chasing, they hit 3 sixes and a 4 to get within 6, but they were never going to win because they were too far behind. So it was probably Josh Hazlewood was bowling, and he was probably just concentrating on keeping his foot behind the line because he knew if he didn't bowl a no ball, there's no way his team could lose. So just an incredible win for RCB. Virat Kohli made top scored for RCB with 43 off 35. He looked nervous, and the score was a little bit under par, I think, for RCB. But then Krunal Pandya was the player to watch. He bowled so well. 4 overs, 2 for 17. 2 for 17. He strangled the Punjab Kings in the middle overs. They just couldn't get away. And in the end, RCB win. So, Damien, will the Melbourne Stars ever win anything?
I was
If
sort of at that
RCB
tag,
can, yeah.
well,
RCB can.
This is the thing. RCB have a similar tag, don't they, as underachievers, and they've been close on a number of occasions too, Bitters. They were runners-up back in 2009, runners-up back in 2011, and runners-up again in 2016. So they've had ample opportunities, and sometimes the pressure has got to them as well over the journey. So that adds to the layer of the narrative here. I think it's a great story. And good to see Josh Hazlewood. I know the Aussies have had a bit of a indifferent IPL campaign holistically when you look at the majority of the players, but he's someone who's stepped up and been very consistent right throughout the tournament and scored a crucial wicket as well during the final. So good on him for claiming a title from the Australian point of view in terms of the runners-up. I mean, you had mentioned Marcus Stoinis before. He made 6. Josh Inglis claimed 39 runs on the losing side, so made a little bit of a contribution there. But well done to Virat Kohli. I think ultimately a bit of emotion coming out as well from him. And he really did anchor that innings too. As you said, maybe a little bit under par in terms of the score, but without his contribution, I think maybe things would have been a little bit different. So for him to make a contribution, to be an anchor in that innings and be the leader that he is, very, very integral, and good to see that emotion. It shows you the affinity that supporters, and it's good now that we come into the 20-year or getting towards that 20-year mark of the IPL, getting close to it, we see these long-term narratives play out, which we didn't have early on.
Yeah, I think RCB were a little nervous, and Kohli was a little slow when they started off, and they managed to finish. I still think RCB were a little under par, but they managed to back it up with the ball. You mentioned Josh Inglis. He was really good, 39 off 23. He looks in great form. He anchored that innings for a while there. He was the one keeping the Punjab Kings in the contest, but he was just losing too many wickets around him, and eventually he fell, and from there, Punjab Kings fell away. Yeah, so Ricky Ponting, the coach of that Punjab Kings, what a turnaround for him, being sacked by the Delhi Capitals. And he comes in, and the Kings hadn't made the finals for, I think, almost 10 years. And then he took them to the big dance, and they just weren't quite good enough on the day. So Krunal Pandya, player of the match, and that's the second time he's been the player of the match in an IPL final. He did it in 2017. So that's a pretty good little thing to have on your CV, player of the match in an IPL final. So just wrapping up the Australians in the IPL, for the winning team, Tim David, he made 187 runs for the Royal Challengers Bangalore before he got injured, but he did it at a strike rate of 185. He was very good at coming in and hitting quick runs for RCB at the end. Josh Hazlewood, 22 wickets at an economy rate of 8.77 with the best bowling of 4 for 33. Exceptional stuff for him. Of the other Australians in the tournament, Mitchell Starc, 14 wickets at an economy of 10. Pretty good. Obviously didn't go back after the break. Mitch Marsh was definitely the Australia batter of the tournament. 627 runs, average under 50, 650s, 100, made 100 at a strike rate of 164. So he's still doing it at T20 level. Pat Cummins, 16 wickets, an economy rate of 9.06, just an average IPL for Cummins, probably not quite up to the standards he would have liked. Josh Inglis, his strike rate of 162.57 is the notable thing. He scored almost 300 runs and a tick over 30. But then the two stinkers of the IPL for Australia, Spencer Johnson, he only played 4 matches, took 1 wicket, and he went for almost 12 runs and over. His average was 133 per wicket. So not a good IPL for him. Dropped after those 4 games. Never seen again. And I guess, Damien, it does sort of highlight how good Starc is, that we shouldn't take him for granted. Everyone says, oh, Spencer Johnson will be in for Starc. Look what he's done in playing in 100 and doing it for the Brisbane Heat. But Starc is exceptional, and he does it at the highest level. And Johnson was kind of found out in this IPL.
That's a fair point. He's got the endurance to back it up. I suppose the worry with Stark is, and as you said, you don't want to take him for granted, is how long will the body hold up over a period of time. So it'll be interesting. Just on Josh Hazelwood as well, I noticed Star Sports, and credit to Daniel Cherney for bringing this up as well, Star Sports have come up with a post, Menners, on social media saying, Hazel God. Josh Hazelwood has never lost a final, right? They go through BBL, IPL, T20 World Cup, etc., etc. What he's been involved in. And Daniel Cherney pointing out, hang on, lost the Sheffield Shield final in 2021 and the Ryobi Cup final in 2013. I thought it's nice and accurate there.
That's very funny. Mitch Marsh finished 5th on the leading run scorers. So good tournament for him. And Josh Hazelwood finished 3rd on the leading bowlers. And the other one to have a real stinker was, after saying all those nice things about him before, Glenn Maxwell. 7 matches, 48 runs and an average of 8. He did take 4 wickets, an economy of 8.46. Again, very dependable bowler, underrated, but really had trouble with the bat and then got injured and didn't play for the second half of the tournament. So that
just on the Maxwell Menners, do you think if this run continues where he does struggle over a 12-month period, does he give the T20 away, given his age?
No, I don't think so. I think we'll see him.
I mean, at international level. I'm not talking about domestic level.
Oh, I think he could retire. The next T20 World Cup is early next year in India and Sri Lanka. That could be his swan song at international level, and then he spends a bit more time with the family, makes a lot of money in T20 cricket. I did enjoy the beautiful scenes when RCB won. AB de Villiers and Chris Gale were there, all these players that had played for RCB and never lifted the title. And Virat Kohli was talking afterwards, and he said how much it meant to him. But then he was asked how much Test cricket means to him, and he said, Test cricket means a lot more to me than T20 cricket, like 5 times more, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, he doesn't mince words, but it was great to hear Kohli on that stage, and he was in a great mood. I have to say, for me, the IPL, personally, I'm not saying it was a bad tournament, just didn't grab me this year.
Really?
It was too long. There was too many weeks where it was kind of decided who the top 4 was. Or we pretty much knew 3 of the 4, and then the last week or so was just people playing for positions in the top 4. That didn't excite me. I want knockout cricket earlier. I want jeopardy earlier. I've said it before. They need to adjust the format. I don't think the break in the middle worked either, because it just extended the sort of length before we actually got to the business end of the tournament. And also for Australians, it's just at a bad time. It starts at midnight, finishes at 4 a.m. I can't watch many games, but as I said, they just need more jeopardy earlier. That's why I think you need to have more teams vying for those spots. So that's why I'd open it up to a 5th spot in the finals.
Look, I agree with you, Metters, but the reality is it's not really about what we think. It's about what the Indian public thinks. And if they want more and more cricket and they're going to keep turning up and it's their showpiece sporting event in terms of a tournament throughout the entire calendar year, I don't know if they have the gluttonous amount that we have in Australia when it comes to a variety of different sports. You can understand why they've extended it out. Like, I agree with you from an Australian point of view. It's far too long, but this is their showpiece event, so I can understand it from an Indian point of view.
Yeah, I just think they've got to get the format right. Then you need either conferences or you need more teams in the finals. So you're just not left with that situation where you've got 3 or 4 teams that are out of finals contention with 3 weeks of the tournament to go. And I just found that very boring viewing, to be honest. All right, that is the IPL. Send all your hate mail to the all the Indians can send the hate mail to the address in the episode notes. Now, turning our attention to the World Test Championship final. I have to say there's not a lot of news coming from the Australian camp because they're just, I think, starting to get into preparations for the test match. Andrew McDonald made those comments last week. I don't think a lot has changed since then. But South Africa have engaged in some psyops. They've gone into some deep psychological warfare, and they have hired Stuart Broad to be their consultant for one day in the lead up to the World Test Championship final. So on June 9th, Stuart Broad will be at the South African training, giving him all his tips about how he used to get the Aussies out, how he tormented us for so long in the Ashes. So a great ploy by South Africa to get one of Australia's, arch rivals in their camp before the Test match. So that's it really from the World Test Championship. There was a little bit of pushback on social media around my idea to open with Josh Inglis with Usman Khawaja. I still like the idea. He's in good form. I think we need a counter-attacking player, but it's not ideal. But I still think it might be the way to go. What do you think, Damien?
I can understand the pushback, but then again, do you put someone more experienced at that level in a Test match final, World Test Championship final, that could absorb the pressure? I can understand not necessarily going with Inglis, but I see what you mean. I mean, he's in pretty good form. Just on the build-up, you mentioned it before, we had this similar situation, I reckon, in 2023, where I don't think we really felt the build-up here in Australia until maybe a couple of days before the final itself. Remember, it was a bit of an anticlimactic build-up, and then once it was on, it engaged a lot of people because we were sort of in that mid-season slump when it comes to the footy codes. So I reckon we'll start to see it maybe next week, a bit more attention devoted to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just feel that if you have a top four of Usman Khawaja, Marnus Labuschagne, Cameron Green and Steve Smith as your top four, I just think we're missing an attacking player there. I think it'll allow South Africa's bowlers to hit a spot, and we need someone that can be counter-attacking. But okay, so just on what you were saying there, Damien, the big difference is last time it was on free-to-air television. This time it's just going to be on Amazon Prime. And thank you, Martin Lawrence, who's pointed out that your employer, SEN, will be providing ball-by-ball coverage, as will the ABC. So if you can't watch it on Amazon, you'll be able to hear it. It's not going to be on free-to-air television, which is a big difference. I am going to do daily reports. I'm going to stay up all night and I'm going to record something when they go off at stumps, whether that's 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm going to do my best to do a show every night after play. It'll be Mad Manners on my own because I'm not sure I'll be able to get anyone to join me, maybe someone in England. But I'll be doing daily reports throughout the World Test Championship. So if you can't watch it live, you will be able to catch up in the morning with Mad Manners. I will have a week of little sleep, but a lot of cricket. I can't wait. I have made the tough decision. I'm not going to do daily reports for the West Indies tour because that brutal timing, Damien. It starts at midnight and finishes at 7 a.m. And it's 3 tests. I would be a wreck. I don't think those tests are worth that kind of effort. Not that they're not important, but I won't be doing daily reports for the West Indies, but I will be for the World Test Championship. And unless you want to join me at 3 or 4 a.m., Damien, of course you're welcome.
We'll see how I go. It just sort of depends. I reckon I would have in the past, maybe a bit late at night, as I have done with you in the past. But look, we'll see how we go. If it's an exciting finish, Manners, I'll be there. Maybe at the end of the Test match potentially.
Yeah, maybe come the weekend.
Yeah. That's it. But, yeah, it'd be interesting. You mentioned before in terms of the pushback on social media. Did anyone actually have an alternative view specifically to your suggestion?
There was some feeling that you just stick Constas in because he's that counter-attacking player and he did it on Boxing Day, and I would have no problem with that. If you say to Constas, we're just going to back this kid, go out there and take on Rabada, I like it. I probably wouldn't maybe do it in a final. As I said before, I would have wanted him to play in Sri Lanka to just get more used to Test cricket, but either one is good. If they go Constas at the SCG, why not? If they go Constas at Lords, why not? That's the World Test Championship final. South Africa are playing a warm-up game against Zimbabwe. I think they're starting now as we record this. And Australia are getting ready. There's no news out of the Australian camp. I think we know pretty much what the team is going to be. It's just kind of who bats where and a couple of little selection issues at the top of the order. But it's pretty stable build-up. We're going to take our last break. Before I do that, I just want to say cricket is so back. After Sandpapergate, after COVID, there's been a little bit of a slump, but he's not in a slump anymore. The Ashes tickets went on sale yesterday. In 2 days, they have sold over 300,000 tickets to the Ashes this summer. Cricket Australia has smashed all its records. It's the highest individual day of ticket sales in history. And, we saw records broken last summer against India. Records are going to get broken this summer. I can't wait to be a part of it. It really got me excited, Damien, and that was incredible response from the fans.
Just on that, Menners, where do you think? I mean, cricket's gone through some peaks and troughs in Australia over the journey. Where do you think, in terms of cricket fandemonium, if I want to use that expression, where do you think we stand? Because I think there's still concerns for me in terms of the level of competition from other sports and how relevant cricket is amongst the Australian social sphere, because there's far more competition now than there was back in the 1970s and 1980s, when really cricket was the only thing to watch in the summer. Channel 9 obviously were very powerful back then. Where do you think it stands at the moment in terms of fandemonium in Australia? Have we reached, I'm not necessarily saying we've reached a peak, but is it the best, if you want to compare it to certain eras, is it the best, say, for 20 years that it's been in terms of the level of interest?
I think it's the best it's ever been. I just don't think you can compare it. You look at those, well, in my lifetime anyway, you look at those crowds last year, 400,000 people attended the Boxing Day test. And we are seeing record figures of viewers, record consumption. The Big Bash is back. I don't think cricket's ever been better, ever stronger than it is right now. And I think the numbers support that. Sure, there's been some really strong periods, but you look at across the board, the way cricket's performing, it's in an exceptional spot.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I do have my concerns at grassroots level matters in terms of the level of participation. But yeah, you got the numbers to back it up, so that's fair enough. But it's just interesting. The level of competition outside, I think, has never been greater either. So if anything, that probably highlights and probably exacerbates the achievement that cricket has made in Australia over the last couple of years in particular to sustain the level of interest, because the challenges have never been greater either.
It's interesting you talk about grassroots cricket, and I'm fortunate enough to still be a part of community cricket and grade cricket through commentary. So I do have some engagement with it, and I can tell you that there is a change in the way Premier cricket is played. In a sense, some players dip out younger than they used to, but grade cricket is still very popular, and it's also being fueled by an incredible influx of South Asian immigrants, and they want to play grade cricket, and they are fueling grade cricket. So you're seeing in some of the outer suburbs in Sydney, a lot of South Asians playing in grade cricket clubs, Indians, Pakistanis, everybody. So it is really great to see that, and I think that's important to the future of cricket. We'll see that. I guarantee, Damien, we will see that reflected in the Australian team. Usman Khawaja is a bit of a groundbreaker, but there'll be plenty more players of Indian or Pakistani background or wherever playing for Australia in the years to come. And they are really helping sustain grassroots cricket.
No, I agree. And that is 100% true in the sense that, there's a heavy uptake in those numbers. And it'll only get bigger too, because as we know, India's population in particular has sprawled across the world. They have the highest population in the world. They've overtaken China in terms of people of descent. So, I think that would be, that we know how important India is to world cricket in general, Menners. So you're right, and I think it's going to be reflected at grassroots level. It already is being reflected at grassroots level.
I am so happy how much Indians love cricket, because they are going to take cricket all around the world. They're going to keep cricket alive. They're going to make it they're going to make it the second biggest sport in the world.
It is already second biggest sport.
Yeah, but it's going to stay there, and I think it's going to keep growing. I don't think it'll ever overtake football, but great stuff. All right, so cricket is humming. Get your Ashes tickets, because they're selling fast. All right, we're taking our final break in Cricket Unfiltered. We've got some changes to the laws of one-day cricket, and we've got Can't Let It Go. You're listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Manners. I'm with Damien Watson. And Damien, the World Test Championship final starts next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So I'm not sure what we're going to do about recording next week, listeners. I'll be doing daily reports after the World Test Championship final. Maybe we'll do a little preview before then. We'll just see how we go. We'll see how much news we get. I'm sure we'll get an idea of the team a couple of days before. But yeah, that's next Wednesday at 8 p.m. first ball. The WTC, just excited. Speaking of exciting things, Damien, there have been some changes to one-day international cricket. And this is a bit of a throwback to when I was a kid. So they're going back to a single ball format, not completely. They're having a ball at both ends from 1 to 34. So each ball will have 17 overs bowled. And then for the last 15 overs, they're just using one ball. Or for the last 16 overs, they're just using one ball. And the fielding side gets to pick which ball they want to use. And this is just to try and even the balance between bat and ball, because using that older ball will do two things. It might enable reverse swing. I'm not so sure it will, depending how the fielding side looks after the ball, but you are able to sort of take the lacquer off one side of the white ball easier than the red ball, and it will mean the ball's a bit softer. So it just takes a little bit of the edge off for the batters, so it gives the bowlers a bit more of a chance. I don't think it'll make a huge difference, but I do like this attempt at getting reverse swing back in the game, which, if you remember Waqar Younis bowling those late induckers, that is great viewing. That's as exciting as watching someone hit a six.
I completely agree. I don't know if it'll make, given the advancements, so the evolution of batting, I don't think it'll make a substantial difference to scoring. But I think it's a good move in the sense that, I would love to see more and more of that reverse swing. And I think any move to try and even up the balance between bat and ball, I'm supportive of that. So, it'll be interesting, but I don't know if I could be proven wrong, but I don't think it'll make a substantial difference to the scoring.
I tend to agree with you. And the other thing is, I think in the olden days, they used to use one ball for 50 overs in a lot of games. And the last 10 overs, the ball was hard to see because it would almost be the same color of the outfield.
Yeah.
Teams would bring on slow bowlers to just take the pace off with the soft white ball and try and make it difficult to score. So we'll see if that happens. And the other thing is they've tightened concussion protocols. So now a team has to nominate 5 designated substitutes, and they have to be specifically one each from the categories of wicketkeeper, batter, seam bowler, spinner, and all-rounder, and that's prior to the match. So that it stops anyone playing any funny business with the concussion sub. It would mean you couldn't maybe pick someone who sort of loosely fits into one category, but might strengthen you in another area and nefariously use the rules to your advantage. I can't remember an incident where this has been flaunted. We've seen sort of issues with concussion before. I remember Justin Langer blowing up at his mate David Boone when India did something funny in a limited overs game, but clearly this is a preventative measure. And it's fine. I think it's good. The teams have to nominate exactly who's replacing who before a game.
Yeah, I think so. It's all good for transparency as well, Menners. So I'm supportive of it as well. It'll be interesting to see, given in many of the contact sports, Menners, concussions become a bigger and bigger issue, whether there's any changes or greater precautions that are made when it comes to cricket as well. We've had and even though I say make the comparison with contact sports, we've had some tragic instances in cricket as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether there's further developments in that area, particularly when you look at the possibility of class action going down the line with certain players. You just never know what's around the corner in that space. It's an interesting one to watch.
Yep, definitely. Absolutely. All right, those are all the cricket headlines. A lot of great news to talk about. Really enjoyed it. Before we get into Can't Let It Go, great news. You're getting an extra episode of Cricket Unfiltered this week. On Saturday, I'm airing an interview with Jared Kimber. He wrote a new book, The Art of Batting. There's some great stuff in there. We also talk about Mark Waugh, some great stuff on him after his 60th birthday. But tune in. That's airing Saturday night. It'll be released Saturday night. Jared's been on the show before, but always great to have him on. So keep an eye out for that one on the weekend. Now, it's Can't Let It Go time. And what do you have? What do you have, Damien?
I love Australia A, Menners, in many facets because I grew up with it. And I noticed since we last spoke that Australia A are going to take on Sri Lanka. That's been announced in Darwin. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. 16-player squad's been named, so Nathan McSweeney and Matt Renshaw will feature. Jake Weatherall's been rewarded for his great Sheffield Shield form. It's a maiden Australia A call-up for him. Ollie Peake's going to get his taste of senior international cricket as well, so it'll be interesting to see how they go. Curtis Patterson, who's been going through a bit of a renaissance in his career as well. He's been picked in the squad in the one-dayers and the pair of first-class matches in July. So watch that space as well. And we've seen a lot of, I suppose, Premier cricket, if you want to use that expression, tournaments being played, and a bit of mini Big Bash as well up in Darwin in the winter to sustain some of those players during the off-season. So I think it's good that this has been extended to Australia A as well. And we're going to see more and more top-level cricket at the top end, as we know, in the years to come.
Yeah, I was thinking of going up to Queensland for the winter cricket, but I think I'm going to save it for the Ashes. But I think it'll be great. And I'm glad to see Australia A playing in, and I'm glad to see Curtis Patterson back in there, because with Australia about to lose a lot of top order muscle in the next year or so with Smith, Khawaja, etc., there'll be room for someone of Patterson's temperament and maturity in that team if he can continue to plunder runs. All right. I can't let it go. I've got two. The first one is we haven't mentioned on the show, but they were talking about they're talking about building a new ground in Tasmania for cricket and AFL and putting a roof on it. That is in serious jeopardy, which is not good for Tasmanian cricket. So I'm hoping they sort that out. There's a lot of problems at the moment with the roof casting shadows over a cricket pitch, and the AFL and cricket, I don't think can come to an agreement on the design. And then you add in the Tasmanian government is now maybe going to an election, and the whole project could be scrapped. So, Bellerive Oval might be given a lifeline if the stadium doesn't go ahead.
It'd be a real shame just on that, man, as we've seen, and look, people might disagree with me, and I can understand some of the sentiment away from the stadium from certain people within the Tasmanian community, but we've seen in Adelaide and Perth what a brand new stadium can do to try and stimulate the economy and bring big events to a particular state. I understand it's a big investment, but I think it's a worthwhile investment because we see a decent amount of tourism in Tasmania. Imagine if you add in some sporting events there and what that would do to the local economy. I know it's tough times in Tasmania in terms of, you want to spend money on hospitals and more essential services. I can understand that, but it'd be great to stimulate the economy, and it'd be a shame if it falls over for something pretty external. It's really due to, for those international listeners, it's due to the state government in a situation where the Premier is facing a no confidence motion, and there could be another election a year after the previous election.
Yeah, it doesn't augur well for Tasmanian cricket. And I got one little can't let it go, Damien. And for those listening on the podcast, it's not going to be quite as dramatic, but for those watching, what the hell has happened to me? Here I am, for those listening, at the SCG, decked out in Swans gear with the great cricket ground behind me. And you can see the square. There are people on the square. I get so irate whenever I see them bounce the ball on the square. But here I am, after all my hate of AFL on this podcast, I'm back on the Swans. I went to their game on Saturday night. They got hammered by a century, so it wasn't a good game. But I've been converted.
You actually enjoy the AFL, Menace? You must if you're going. You've been going pretty frequently this year, even though your team's not going well. That adds an extra layer to this because the team, it's not like you're jumping on a bandwagon here. Your team's going terribly.
Yeah, I enjoy the AFL, and I do like it a lot more than NRL. I do think it's too long, though. Like, I want 4 quarters of AFL is too much for me. And you'll never hear me say that about cricket. I could just watch it forever. But I just find when I get to that fourth quarter, it's hard, though, because the Swans were down by 100 by the fourth quarter. So we left anyway. But anyway, that's me. I've been converted to AFL. I still do not like them running on the pitch at the SCG. So it's hard for me to watch, but great to be at the Sydney Cricket Ground. Actually, a couple of AFL players listen to this podcast, one from the Western Bulldogs.
Who's this?
We'll tell you offline. But anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. Remember, Jared Kimber episode coming on the weekend. We'll be back next week covering the World Test Championship final. I will be sacrificing my sleep and be doing daily reports. I cannot wait. Can Australia lift another title? We just can't stop winning titles. It's just unbelievable. Damien, where can the listeners catch up with you?
At Damo_Watts on Twitter. And I'm going to be commentating a Greater Western Sydney game, Menners, on the weekend. So they're playing Port Adelaide down in Canberra, another cricket ground where they're running over the top of where the pitch usually is.
There you go. Well, thanks everybody. If you like your AFL, tune into the dulcet tones of Damien Watson on the weekend on ECN, and we'll be back soon. Bye bye.